Hi and welcome everyone. FluGuide recently released their Q4 2023 report, and to talk about what happened in 2023 and what's in the newswire for 2024, I have the pleasure of interviewing the company's CEO Morten Albrechtsen and the company's CFO Ole Larsen. Gentlemen, thank you so much for doing this interview, and please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Christian. We pleased to be here today and presenting our result, but also give you a very brief update on where we are and what we do. So I'll try to summarize it in 3 slides, really what we do. We work on improving outcome for patients with cancer, and we do that by precision surgery. And this is our disclosure. So really, what most of you would know is that unfortunately 18 million patients every year have cancer. But what is not that common known is that about 80% of them undergo surgery sometimes during the disease. And unfortunately, half of those will have recur locally of the cancer. And that means that there really is a need for improving surgery of cancer. And the reason for that is that the surgeons today use basically only visualization and palpation when they find cancer. And that means they use their eyes and their fingers. So this is the problem that cancer surgery could be more efficient. And the solution to it is that is precision. And our lead product, FD001, coming from our UPAR target technology, has two functions. One of them is guiding surgery, and it lights up the cancer so the surgeon can see the cancer during surgery and can make a precise removal of the cancer and still spare the normal tissue. The other effect of it is a known effect as well from the molecule that is part of the molecule, is that when you light on it, it will heat up. And when it heats up, it would actually destroy the cells it's bound to. So that's a way where very specifically can destroy the cancer cell without damage the normal tissue. That term is photothermal therapy. And what you can expect from us during the year is that we will advance FD001 toward the market, both in head and neck cancer and in brain cancer. That would be very much to do with the regulatory definition of the trials we need to do for getting it to the market. We will enhance the benefit, and that means we will add photothermal therapy, but we also do other things with partners that actually are able to help patients that are not able to be helped today. Then we expand the number of patients. One step into that is that we go into other indications that address brain cancer. We look into head and neck cancer. And that will advance and expand our market significantly. And last but not least, we start preparing the commercialization. And 2 aspects of that is to go to market with a key opinion leader reimbursement and incorporate that into the registration trial. And the other aspect of it is partnering, integrating into the equipment. And that's also what we would expect to see from us this year. And with that, I will give the word to you, Ole, with our result.
Thank you, Morten. And if we look on the financial highlights, you'll see that we had an EBIT loss of 43.9 million in 23. And that comes down to the fact that we are investing a lot of money in research and development. And as you can see, that is also the majority of our spending is in research and development. And then we have our staff around 15 million. If you look at our net loss for the year, it is slightly lower, and that is due to the fact that in Denmark we have this tax credit thing where you can get up to 5.5 million if you invest enough in research and development, and we have done that in the past couple of years. If you look at the cash flow for 2023, it was negative by 4 million, so almost a break-even cash price. And that is due to the fact that the operational activities was covered by equity financing. We did a directed issue in July of 23, and in connection with that was also warrants issued, and they were exercised, or most of them were exercised in December, where we raised another 12 million Swedish krona. And then we also made a credit facility of 20 million Danish kroner, of which we drew 10 million in 23, basically meaning that with the remaining credit facility and our current cash position, we have a runway, or secured a runway until the end of 24. Maybe also worth mentioning is that the the income for 2023 was less than 500,000 due to the fact that the EU project we had finalized in early 23, but we received or revenue recognized all the income in 22. And with that, I will hand it back to you, Morten.
Yes. Yeah, and I would just want to summarize then with what you can expect to see from us this year. So we have had a lot of very interesting achievements in 23 and beyond, or before. And what you would expect to see from us in 24 here would be that we confirmed regulatory trial design for our as an imaging agent for FD001. We will initiate our head and neck trial, and we'll look into how we integrate full thermotherapy into the labeling and the development. And in 25, you will see the registration trial will be initiated for FD001. We will have the result of the head and neck, and also on the first clinical trial for thermotherapy. On business development, you will see partnering, and you will see in 25 you will additionally see our go-to-market plan. So that is short what you can expect from us in the next years.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that great presentation. Now, let's get to the Q&A. And I want to start off with discussing both FD001 in head and neck cancer, but also in high-grade glioma. When it comes to high-grade glioma and phototherapy, can you elaborate a little bit on, which activities are going to be conducted this year to potentially combine surgical guidance and phototherapy in the phase 3 trial?
Yes, and this is a very good question. So the first thing we need to do is defining the laser system that is to be used, and with all equipment that we think of, that's a lot of specification that goes to that. That is preferably something that is plug and play. It's preferably something that support partnering going down the route when we do go to top the market. And then, of course, there's a technical specification, of course, as well related to it. So that's the first step, which you will see in first half being confirmed. Then in parallel with that, a lot of preclinical experiment is going to take place. And that is, to give some examples, we have to support the safety when we go into clinical trials. So how high can we actually adjust the laser? We will look into different applications. We will look into, for instance, could we clean up the cavity afterward, or should the cancer be a certain size before we can clean it out? So there will be different aspects of those coming into it. Then the next step would be, I call it signal of activity, where we would look into human tissue, potentially from patient that is taken out from the patient. We can look to that and see if we can translate some of the animal data and the dose finding we have in the animal over to the human tissue. And then, of course, it will be a real clinical trials coming into play in the end. And the CTA for the clinical trial will be expected about year end this year, and will start next year. But we will have a lot more certainty of how that would work with thermotherapy, the exact application, how we should set up with the laser system, and the regulatory pathways will be developed as we progress this year. So that is what you could expect this year.
Perfect. And when it comes to your planned phase 2 trial in head and neck cancer, we've received several questions. The first one being, you mentioned that some of the endpoints will be related to patient benefit. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what's going to be the exact benefit or endpoint in that trial?
Yes, it's also a very good question. I mean, the steps we have in our development is the first step we have in humans is that we have to confirm safety. And that we need to do in one indication only, and that is what we have done already in aggressive brain cancer trial. That was started off with a safety, you can say, aim, and we have demonstrated that FD001 is really well tolerated across the patient, and that's been confirmed also in all the other patients that have been treated. So that's a very nice starting point. Then the next step we have to take is that we have to demonstrate that our product light up the cancer in a certain proportion. So say, for instance, that only 1 out of 10 patients had light of cancer, then it would not be implemented into the clinical practice without some kind of screening. Or so we have set a term for us that we need at least 65% of the patients should have cancer that lights up before going into an indication to make it relevant. And that comes back to, if you look at the FDA's position, that 1 out of 10 should have benefit of the product. That comes out of that. And then if you multiply that with the proportion of patients that would have benefit, that is approximate, giving this 65, 2/3 of it. In head and neck, we demonstrated all patients had cancer that lights up. So that, of course, that was far beyond what we would need. And that's a nice starting point again. But having cancer that lights up does not necessarily give any benefit to the patient if you should be, what can I say, objective or rude. So the next step we then have in the phase 2 would be to demonstrate the benefit for the patient. And benefit in head and neck can take many different shapes. And that's interesting with this indication, is that one aspect could be that when you take out the cancer, then you would like to be sure that you're taking out all cancer. And today you check it with the specimen you take out and look at the surface and see there's no cancer on the surface. Because if you have cancer on the surface of the tissue you take out, then there would be something left in where you're taking it out from. So that's one application. You have an application where you have to find lymph node on the neck, for instance, when you check it then there. That's an application. And then you have the deeper located cancer in the head and neck. They are today not enabled, or you're not accessible for surgery. So if you make them accessible for surgery, you can actually help more patients. You can do partnering with equipment manufacturers that can sell their equipment there. And that's really a win-win for all stakeholders in the field. So there are many aspects of how you can actually do this benefit. So that is the next aspect of our development, is demonstrating the benefit that is relevant for the patient and where we can get approval. So in this trial we come up with now, we will look into different benefit endpoints, and we selected one that we think is a regulatory endpoint that we will anticipate we can get approval on when the approval works. So in terms of what is needed, so we first have the safety that is done. We have the proof of concept lights up, it's done. Then we need to have demonstrated benefit. And then the last is a regulatory trial where we have to confirm this in a larger population. So that's the step. So the trial we'll do now is benefit, where we look into regulatory endpoints, defined as regulatory agency would like to see them. And we have a couple of them in the trial. And then assuming they're positive, we can use it to support approval.
Got it. And you partly answered a related question we've received already, but I'm going to ask it anyways, and you can add whatever you think is necessary and useful. But how should investors view you going from a phase 2 trial to another phase 2 trial in head and neck cancer? Should they see the coming trial more as a phase 2b?
You have a lot of discussion what is A and what is B, but what normally is the position is that the 2B trial will be a support for regulatory agency. It'll be one of the, you need a phase 2B and you need a phase 3 trial. And if the result of the trial is positive, meaning that the benefit endpoint we use is demonstrated to be positive, and the way we measure it is working well, it will be a 2B trial. If we have to, tweak the measurement of the endpoint a little or tweak patient population a little, then it will be a 2A. So it really depends on the result.
Great. And the last question we received regarding head and neck is, can we expect you, if you get positive results, to initiate a phase 3 trial in that indication in 2025?
Well, it will be close, and it will depend a bit of the application, because there could be different options in this, and it could also be influenced by partnering. So I think we should wait and see a little how things are going in this indication. But yes, of course we could, because you could say that it really depends on how you put up the regulatory trials, and also it depends on the feedback from agencies, how aggressive you can be, and as well it depends on the result of the product in the indication. So a lot of things into play here. So I will not say it's a promise, but it's of course a hope, and it really depends on data and all the other things playing out here.
Great. Now let's get to business development and financing. You seem pretty confident that partnerships will be part of your news flow in 2024 and 2025. So can you elaborate a little bit more on, what kind of partnerships can investors expect, and for example, in which indication will be your first partnership in?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of partnership, I mean, we we've been looking into this from the very start, and it's important for us to validate that when we get to the market, then that also we have a proposition that is fitting into the partners that we're going to work with, and we want the big partners to support us, not working against us. So this has been very important from the very start. What's also been important for us is that partnering is a dilution of our assets the same way as financing is, and of course we have to. For the shareholders, we have to have a little dilution as possible and create as much value as possible. So partnering is not just a question of doing it as quickly as possible, but doing it in the right way. So this has also been what we've been looking very much into since the very beginning. And where we are right now is that we see that we expect that we can do multiple non-exclusive partnerships where we can have multiple partners working, for instance, with us in the head and neck, in different applications, using different equipment, using different benefits. And this is what we would aim to prove this year, and that this is possible. Why we are competent on it is comfortable on it and promising it is because really we see that there's kind of a shift in the whole field, that from the very beginning where we started, there was a more laid back attitude from many of the partners, where we now see them getting, they have a strategy now, they know what they want, they know how they want to work with the companies of our kind, and we see them much more forward leaning. So that's why we are pretty positive that this will happen this year for the first one. But I think also it's important that it will not be a typical drug-like deal where we get a lot of payment upfront and you see us being more or less acquired by the company. It will much more be a medtech-like deals where we see multiple deals that are very backloaded, but on the other hand, they're not diluting us in the short term. And that is the kind of deals we think is most benefit for us and the partner and I mean the shareholders.
Perfect. And to round off, as you already mentioned during the presentation, this quarter you utilized around 10 million of your 20 million credit facility. Should we see that as a permanent part of a capital structure, or do you intend to utilize the credit facility more as a buffer between other sources of cash, so to speak?
It very much depends on how the various financing opportunities evolves. One thing being the partners, another thing being the equity market. But of course, as we mature as a company, debt should be a part of the financing of the company, especially once we start really producing and manufacturing material, so that you have a decent working capital. Then it could be expected. But of course, you also need to look at your balance sheet. How does that look with debt on it? So that's a balance right now that we are monitoring carefully. But you could see credit facilities as a part of the financing of the company.
Perfect. I think I can speak for everyone if I say that we look forward to following FluoGuide during 2024 and beyond. So Morten and Ole, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you, Christian.
Thank you.